hotel with whom they did not "get on" nor "hit it off" were a military party, chiefly named Clutterbuck, and presided over by a Major Clutterbuck and his wife. They sat at a large table in the corner: father, mother, several children, a sister-in-law, a sister, a governess, 8 heads in all; and while utterly polite, they seemed to draw a ring round themselves. They grumbled at the hotel, they played bridge, then a newish game, and once, when Denry and the Countess played with them (Denry being an adept card player) for shilling points, Denry overheard the sister-in-law saying that she was sure Captain Deverax wouldn't play for shilling points. This was the first rumour of the existence of Captain Deverax, but afterwards Captain Deverax began to be mentioned several times a day. Captain Deverax was coming to join them, and it seemed that he was a very particular man. Soon all the rest of the hotel had got its back up against this arriving Captain Deverax. Then a Clutterbuck cousin came, a smiling, hard, fluffy woman, and pronounced definitely that the Hotel Beau Site would never do for Captain Deverax. This cousin aroused Denry's hostility in a strange way. She imparted to the Countess, who united all sects, her opinion that Denry and Nellie were on their honeymoon. At night, in a corner of the drawing room, the Countess delicately but bluntly asked Nellie if she had been married long. "No," said Nellie. "A month?" asked the Countess, smiling. "No," said Nellie. The next day all the hotel knew. The vast edifice of make believe that Denry and Nellie had laboriously erected crumbled at a word, and they stood forth, those two, blushing for the criminals they were. The hotel was delighted. There is more rejoicing in a hotel over one honeymoon couple than over 50 families with children. But the hotel had a shock the same day. The Clutterbuck cousin had proclaimed that owing to the inadequacy of the bedroom furniture she had been obliged to employ a sofa as a wardrobe. Then there were more references to Captain Deverax, and then at dinner it became known (Heaven knows how) that the entire Clutterbuck party had given notice and was seceding to the Hotel Métropole. Also they had tried to carry the Countess with them, but had failed. Now, among the guests of the Hotel Beau Site there had always been a professed scorn of the rival Hotel Métropole, which was a franc a day dearer, and famous for its new and rich furniture. The Métropole had an orchestra twice a week, and the English church services were held in its drawing room, and it was larger than the Beau Site. In spite of these facts, the clients of the Beau Site affected to despise it, saying that the food was inferior and that the guests were snobbish. It was an article of faith in the Beau Site that the Beau Site was the best hotel on the mountain side, if not in Switzerland. The insolence of this defection on the part of the Clutterbucks! How on earth could people have the face to go to a landlord and say to him that they meant to desert him in favour of his rival? Another detail. The secession of 9 or 10 people from one hotel to the other meant that the Métropole would decidedly be more populous than the Beau Site, and on the point of numbers the emulation was very keen. "Well," said the Beau Site, "let 'em go, with their Captain Deverax. We shall be better without 'em." And that deadliest of all feuds sprang up, a rivalry between the guests of rival hotels. The Métropole had issued a general invitation to a dance, and after the monstrous conduct of the Clutterbucks the question arose whether the Beau Site should not boycott the dance. However, it was settled that the truly effective course would be to go with critical noses in the air and emit unfavourable comparisons with the Beau Site. The Beau Site suddenly became perfect in the esteem of its patrons. Not another word was heard on the subject of hot water being coated with ice, and the Clutterbucks, with incredible assurance, slid their luggage off in a sleigh to the Métropole in the full light of day amidst the contempt of the faithful. 3. Under the stars, the dancing section of the Beau Site went off in jingling sleighs over the snow to the ball at the Métropole. The distance was not great, but it was great enough to show the inadequacy of furs against 20 degrees of mountain frost, and it was also great enough to allow the party to come to a general, final understanding that its demeanour must be cold and critical in the gilded halls of the Métropole. The rumour ran that Captain Deverax had arrived, and every one agreed that he must be an insufferable booby, except the Countess Ruhl, who never used her fluent exotic English to say ill of anybody. The gilded halls of the Metropole certainly were imposing. The hotel was incontestably larger than the Beau Site, newer, more richly furnished. Its occupants, too, had a lordly way with them, trying to others, but inimitable. Hence the visitors from the Beau Site, as they moved to and fro beneath those crystal chandeliers from Tottenham Court Road, had their work cut out to maintain the mien of haughty indifference. Nellie, for instance, frankly could not do it, and Denry did not do it very well. Denry, nevertheless, did score 1 point over Mrs. Clutterbuck's fussy cousin. "Captain Deverax has come," said this latter. "He was very late. He'll be downstairs in a few minutes. We shall get him to lead the cotillion." "Captain Deverax?" Denry questioned. "Yes, you've heard us mention him," said the cousin, affronted. "Possibly," said Denry. "I don't remember." On hearing this brief colloquy, the cohorts of the Beau Site felt that in Denry they possessed the making of a champion. There was a disturbing surprise, however, waiting for Denry. The lift descended, and with a peculiar double action of his arms on the doors, like a pantomime fairy emerging from an enchanted castle, a tall, thin man stepped elegantly out of the lift and approached the company with a certain mincingness. But before he could reach the company, several young women had rushed towards him, as though with the intention of committing suicide by hanging themselves from his neck. He was in an evening suit so perfect in detail that it might have sustained comparison with the costume of the head waiter, and he wore an eyeglass in his left eye. It was the eyeglass that made Denry jump. For 2 seconds he dismissed the notion, but another 2 seconds of examination showed beyond doubt that this eyeglass was the eyeglass of the train, and Denry had apprehensions. "Captain Deverax!" exclaimed several voices. The manner in which the youthful and the mature fair clustered around this captain aged 40 and not handsome was really extraordinary to the males of the Hôtel Beau Site. Even the little Russian Countess attached herself to him at once, and by reason of her title, her social energy, and her personal distinction, she took natural precedence of the others. "Recognise him?" Denry whispered to his wife. Nellie nodded. "He seems rather nice," she said diffidently. "Nice?" Denry repeated the adjective. "The man's an ass." And the majority of the Beau Site party agreed with Denry's verdict either by word or gesture. Captain Deverax stared fixedly at Denry, then smiled vaguely and drawled, "Hullo! How d'you do?" And they shook hands. "So you know him?" some one murmured to Denry. "Know him? Since infancy." The inquirer scented facetiousness, but he was somehow impressed. The remarkable thing was that though he regarded Captain Deverax as a popinjay, he could not help feeling a certain slight satisfaction in the fact that they were in some sort acquaintances. Mystery of the human heart! He wished sincerely that he had not, in his conversation with the Captain in the train, talked about previous visits to Switzerland. It was dangerous. The dance achieved that brightness and joviality which entitle a dance to call itself a success. The cotillion reached brilliance owing to the captaincy of Captain Deverax. Several score opprobrious epithets were applied to the Captain in the course of the night, but it was agreed, nemine contradicente, that, whatever he would have done in front of a light brigade at Balaclava, as a leader of cotillions he was terrific. Many men, however, seemed to argue that if a man who was a man led a cotillion, he ought not to lead it too well, on pain of being considered a coxcomb. At the close, during the hot soup, the worst happened. Denry had known that it would. Captain Deverax was talking to Nellie, who was respectfully listening, about the scenery, when the Countess came up, plate in hand. "No, no," the Countess protested. "As for me, I hate your mountains. I was born in the steppe, where it is all level. Level! Your mountains close me in. I am only here by order of my doctor. Your mountains get on my nerves." She shrugged her shoulders. Captain Deverax smiled. "It's the same with you, isn't it?" he said, turning to Nellie. "Oh no," said Nellie, simply. But your husband told me the other day that when you and he were in Geneva a couple of years ago, in view of Mont Blanc